Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists, covering all things CoS of Strahd and Ravenloft. In this CoS of Strahd video I'm going to be covering a few things that are, in my opinion, easy to miss. There's often been criticisms of people saying that it's quite difficult to find some of the information in the book. It's not helped by the fact that it's a sandbox. And there's a few things I think that are very easy to miss or to forget about, and the point of this video is to point those out. Apologies for the clickbaity title. On the one hand, I hate seeing titles like that. On the other hand, I actually work in digital marketing as a day job, so you think it's something that I would always be doing and thinking of. But to be honest with you, I had no idea what else to call it. My goal with this video is for this to be a short video. Most of my videos are at least 15 minutes long. I've done a few that are over an hour long. My first ever video was about 15 minutes and I thought, oh, that's quite long. And then ironically, it ended up being one of my shorter videos. So my goal with this one is less than 15 minutes. Might be ambitious, but let's see if we can get it under 10. And before I get into it, just a warning that there are obviously spoilers for CoS of Strahd in this. This is kind of intended for DMs, so details DMs might miss when running the game. If you are a current player of CoS of Strahd or you want to play CoS of Strahd one day, this will contain spoilers that might ruin the experience for you and upset your DM. You're doing a bit of a disservice to your DM if you're finding out secrets of a campaign that they are running. So it pains me to say this, but please skedaddle. Come back another time. If you've played the campaign or know it well already through like DMing it or have completed it, then you should be good. Right, let's get into it. Number 1, Lady Wachter's Imp. So firstly, I say Wachter, it's an old habit. I think it's actually pronounced Wachter from what I heard in the Strahd audiobook. So apologies, I say Wachter, I'm used to it, I know it's wrong. So it's not the fact that she has an imp named Majesto, which is the easy detail to miss. It's what that imp can do. If you look at the stat block of an imp, it has the shape changer ability. It can transform into 3 things: a rat, a spider, and a raven. Now this is pretty exciting because there's a lot of opportunities you could use here, so you can have some fun and games. Maybe, for example, Lady Wachter discovers the nature of the Martikovs or knows that they're somehow tied to ravens. Then she could send in Majesto in his raven form as a spy. Or if she knows that the PCs are working with the Martikovs, she could potentially try and trick the PCs into luring them somewhere. Say if the PCs see a raven and it tries to signal to them and it's actually luring them to a trap, but it's actually Majesto disguised as a raven. It's one of those things where I didn't put the pieces together until I actually looked at the imp stat block and connected the dots. So now that you know, that might be something that's handy for your campaign and that you want to add in somehow. Number 2, Lady Wachter's amended spell list. Again, I think this is something that's not very easy to miss. It's more that it's easy to forget. Imagine, and I've seen this a few times on things like Facebook posts and on the CoS of Strahd subreddit, where somebody's talked about Lady Wachter in battle and said she used her cure spells and she used spirit guardians. And if you're in a moment where you're not expecting combat and combat happens, and you might just quickly look and say, right, she's the pre-stat block, and just look at the pre-stat block and then completely forget that she actually has an amended spell list. The reason she has an amended spell list is she needs access to Gentle Repose and Animate Dead for story reasons. But if you look at her amended spell list versus a regular priest spell list, it's very different, and there's no healing spells, and also there's not many, or if any, attack spells. There's no Sacred Flame, no Guiding Bolt, no Spiritual Weapon, no Spirit Guardians. So it's very different how she would play in battle. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. Number 3, empty houses during the festivals. Now this might be really obvious to people, but for me, I didn't pick up on it at all. When I was a player, playing CoS of Strahd before running it, and then when I DM'd it myself, it wasn't until like halfway through the campaign that I thought, oh yeah, that's a good point. So because attendance to the festivals, such as the Festival of the Blazing Sun, is considered required, and every house should be empty, or are they? Now if the PCs don't figure this out on themselves, and if you've got a party rogue, they're probably like, this is my time to shine, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. If they don't figure it out on their own, more mischievous NPCs, I'm thinking people like Aragorn, the Vistani, or Esmeralda, may hint at it. And it might be an opportunity then for the PCs to think, right, okay, why don't we have a little sneak around the houses while they're there? It might make it easier for them to get hold of a Tarokka item if they know that it's either in the Blue Water Inn, the Burgomaster's Mansion, or the Wachter House, for example. Or if they want to get info on Rictavio and raid his room in the Blue Water Inn. But are the houses empty? Now there could be some surprises for them if they do this. If they go in the Burgomaster's Mansion, they may find Udo still chained up in the closet. they might find Victor. Now, an interesting thing is the module doesn't explicitly state whether Victor attends, or at least I don't think so, please correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't explicitly say that he attends the Festival of the Blazing Sun. I kind of like the idea that only the Baron and the Baroness attend. The Baron tries to persuade Victor. Victor, the moody teenager, says, "No, Dad, I don't want to." And the Baron is just like, "Oh, I haven't got time for this," and just leaves him to it. Now, I think that's quite a funny and hypocritical thing, given the Baron sort of forces attendance that he can't even be bothered to make one of his own family members go. That's interesting on a few levels. It means that if they go into a house, they bump into Victor and, "Oh, hi, we thought this house was empty." It means that people have potential dirt on the Baron. The fact that the Victor's not attended the festival and attendance is required, I can see that being quite riot-worthy through the people who live in Vallaki, and quite upsetting that there's one rule for them and a different rule for the Baron's son. And the same goes for the Wachter house. Stella Wachter, again, I don't think it's implied whether she's there or not. And given her situation, for lack of a better word, I like the idea that the players might be exploring what they think is an empty Wachter house, and they go up the stairs and then they hear somebody making cat noises. That's kind of weird and creepy and freaky. But again, it also means they've got potential dirt then on the Wachter family, as well as the Vlakovic family. I also like the idea Mandy Mod pitched in one of her guides, where she says one thing you consider is that the Baron has a rule where all doors to all properties have to be left unlocked for random searches. And so if your players are in one of these places having a look around, if you want to add to the tension, maybe the guards walk in halfway through their search and they've got to either hide or run away from the guards, or maybe the guards catch them. Do the guards arrest them? Is there combat? Stuff like that. Number 4, playing the Vistani optimally in combat. Firstly, a bit of a disclaimer. I completely understand if people don't like to use the abilities in the book where the Vistani have abilities such as Curse and Evil Eye. For what it's worth, when I put out a product on DMs Guild called the Second Tarocca Reading, which focuses on the Vistani and a Vistana NPC, I hired a Romani sensitivity consultant and sensitivity reader to give their thoughts and make sure it was all okay. This is something that I take quite seriously. So I completely understand if people don't want to do this or don't include those elements of the Vistani in a stat block. If you don't do that, that's fine, just skip this one. If you do, say for example, if your PCs decide to attack Aragorn's camp, it can be quite easy to forget that these abilities exist, especially if you just look at, say for example, the bandit stat block and forget that obviously the Vistani bandit stat block would have these as well. Curse and Evil Eye as a combo can be really dangerous. Evil Eye can impose hold person on someone, so that paralyzes them. That means advantage on attacks, critical hits within 5 feet. And Curse, one of the Curse options is vulnerability to a type of damage. Now imagine you do vulnerability to slashing or piercing damage and they use their swords or their crossbows or what other weapons they have that do slashing and piercing damage. That is brutal. Don't forget that if you're ever in that situation. That's playing those particular minions smart. Now you might argue that the whole thing with the Curse is that they could take 3d6 damage when the Curse ends. So I can't see like an 11 HP bandit stat block deciding to do that. So you might want to save it for bandit captains or Aragorn or Luvash themselves. Also, side note, if you're doing the whole thing about Rictavio's tiger attacking Vistani camp, Evil Eye also has animal friendship. So it makes sense they'd probably use that to try and calm the tiger rather than attack it necessarily. Number 5, Vilnius's role in Amber Temple. So firstly, there's a YouTube channel called No Fun Allowed. I'm mentioning this because I came up with this idea independently, my own accord, and then I watched this video on the Amber Temple and he said the exact same thing. So if I didn't mention this, it looks like I'm copying him, but I did originally come up with the idea myself and then saw that he said it as well and was like, great minds. There is a Staff of Frost in the western corridor on the sort of upper level, and the Staff of Frost has a floor where if you pick it up, or the first PC who touches it craves power. There are some DMs who omit this, myself included, because asking a player to suddenly change how they roleplay, you might have a player who's really up for that, and it's absolutely fine, or maybe they're playing a neutral, borderline evil player and it fits with them, and that's fine. But if you had like someone who isn't comfortable with it, then it's a bit of a weird thing to impose on them. Here's what you do instead through Vilnius, or you could do instead, and it all depends as well on which way they go when they first enter the temple. If they go west first, so they fight the flame skulls, they find the staff, you can just ignore the whole thing. They pick up the staff, nothing happens. If they go east first and they rescue Vilnius, and get the staff later on. Or, accurately I should say, that once the Flame Skulls are defeated and the cowardly Vilnius stops hiding, he barges past them and goes, "Out of my way! It's mine, you hear? That stuff is mine!" And side note, I absolutely love playing Vilnius as just a complete and utter nasty little jerk. It's so much fun as a DM to play characters like that. Then you can have it that the floor affects him. So he's like, "Out of the way! All I want is this staff and the book, and then I just want to get out of here." And he picks it up and he's like, "Huh. On second thoughts, there's a lot of powerful things in this place, isn't there? Maybe I should go with you. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. Maybe explore a bit, see what these vestiges are all about." And that tone shift, that's what happened in my game, and my players were just immediately suspicious. They were like, "That you've changed your tone." So it's a cool way, instead of forcing sort of like a player to roleplay that way, you're kind of doing it yourself as the DM. It affects him and you can roleplay it that way. I think that's a really cool way to do that. Side note, again, sorry, I'm a big fan of side notes. If you decide to play a sort of post-CoS Strahd wider Ravenloft campaign in the future, I decided that Vilnius and his Master Jakarian were originally from Darkon, but had gone to Haslan for a while. So it could be a good thing. Maybe if anyone asks where he's from, Vilnius mentions that. Could be a way to introduce some other domains in the future for post-Barovia adventures. Number 6, Kasimir's and Patrina's information. Again, this isn't like, it's not that their information as a whole is easy to miss. It's because of the nature of how the book is laid out. Their information is split up in, I think, about 4 or 5 different chapters. And I remember so I'm running a post-CoS Strahd Ravenloft campaign at the moment, and Patrina is going to try and become the next Dark Lord after Strahd. So I was trying to dig out information on Patrina recently, and I had a bit of a nightmare. And most of the places where the information for Kasimir and Patrina exist, I think makes sense. But there was one place in particular I was like, that kind of doesn't make sense, but I thought I'd mention it. So their information appears in the Vallaki chapter, in the Vistani camp section. This makes sense. This is where Kasimir is found. It appears in the Amber Temple chapter. This makes sense. That's where Kasimir wants to go. It appears in the Castle Ravenloft chapter. That makes sense. It's where Patrina's remains are buried. It appears in Kasimir's appendix section. Again, makes sense. It's about Kasimir. Another section that contains information for them, which isn't immediately obvious, is Rahadin's appendix. And at first, you're like, what? But then you realise he is a fellow Dusk Elf. He's tied to their story. It threw me because it's not an immediate thing. When you are thinking of all the possible places in the book that you might get information from, that would probably be somewhere you don't think of immediately. And it contains some pretty important info as well. I think it's the only place in the book, correct me if I'm wrong, the only place in the book where it explicitly states, and this is in Rahadin's appendix, that Patrina is the one who told Strahd about the Amber Temple in the first place, which is how Strahd made his pact to become a vampire. So that is huge information buried away in a not so obvious place. There's also a bit of information about Patrina in the epilogue as well, I should mention. And number 7, final battle minions. So when people think about the final battle with Strahd, they want to make sure, and I don't blame them, that it's a satisfying battle. Alone, Strahd stood in the middle of a room, even without sunlight items necessarily, although especially with sunlight items, is probably going to be doomed. I'm not going to go into, it's a whole other video, maybe multiple videos about how to play Strahd in battle, about how you should be like whizzing through walls, using the wall phasing lair action, and all that jazz. And one thing that people like to do as well is include minions, and that makes sense. If you are trying to play CoS Strahd as close to raw rules as written as possible, Strahd should actually be alone when the players meet him, and except for 1 or 2 circumstances, which I'll get to in a minute. This is mentioned in the Strahd's minions. It might also be called the Vampire minions section, separate to a stat block or alongside a stat block, where, let me get the text actually. I've got the book here. Yes, Vampire's minions. Whenever Strahd appears in a location other than his tomb or the place indicated by the card reading, which is essentially where the final battle is supposed to start, he is not supposed to have minions. Now, the book doesn't say anything about the minions appearing from round 2 onwards. You could have them waiting in the wings, waiting there in nearby rooms or areas. But in the first instance, when the characters first walk into the audience hall or the study or the top of whichever tower it is, I forgot off the top of my head, he should be on his own. And then reinforcements arrive. And he can do things like Children of the Night as well, which brings minions. But I just thought I'd mention that for people who want to play raw or as close to raw as possible. The only exception is Strahd's coffin, where again, raw, where his 3 brides are waiting. So, or if he's defeated earlier on without sunlight and mists back to his coffin, they fight him then. I'm pretty sure all the other locations are, if you visit them and he's not there, they're empty anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that's it. I can't tell at the moment, but hopefully this is below, I'm pretty sure this is going to be below 15 minutes. Hopefully it's below 10. I'm curious to know, did you know all these? Maybe you knew all these and you're really disappointed watching this, in which case, sorry. Hopefully 1 or 2 of them are things you didn't already know. Do you have any easy to miss details you'd like to add? Feel free to leave a comment. I'd be curious to see what you say. I've got a few more CoS Strahd videos lined up and Ravenloft videos as well. Next CoS Strahd video is likely to be alternative random encounters. There's a few random encounters that aren't in the book that I like to add from other sources outside of the Monster Manual and CoS Strahd. That's likely to be my next CoS Strahd video. And I also do Ravenloft videos as well. So if you're thinking of doing a wider Ravenloft campaign, either as like after CoS Strahd or instead of CoS Strahd, or maybe as one-shots, then feel free to take a look at some of those videos as well. And that's it. Nice, short and sweet one. Thank you, Mist Wanderers.